On December 9th, 2018, a 30-year-old Canadian man died in a hotel in India. He took something with him, not money, a password, the only password to roughly $190 million that belonged to other people. When they buried him, 76,000 of those people had a question. And the more I dug into the answer, the less I believed he was in that grave at all. I want to be careful here. Everything I'm about to tell you is on the record. Court filings, auditor reports, his own legal documents. I'm not going to make anything up. I don't have to. Because the documented facts of this case are stranger than anything I could invent. This is the strangest death in the history of crypto, and I want to walk you through it the way I found it. Because every time you think you understand it, it turns. On the surface, it's a tragedy. A young founder, a rare illness, a fortune locked away forever by bad luck. But underneath the surface is a Ponzi scheme. And underneath the Ponzi is a man who had been lying his entire adult life. And underneath that is a will, a refused body, and a question no court has ever managed to answer. I'm telling this from public reporting and the official findings. Everything here is documented, which is what makes it so disturbing, because the facts, on their own, don't add up. Let's start at the beginning, with a teenager who already knew how this game was played. His name was Gerald Cotton, and the first thing you need to understand is that he was not new to this. At 15 years old, Cotton was already running money through high-yield investment programs, which is a polite name for Ponzi schemes. A 15-year-old learning the exact mechanics of taking people's money and paying the early ones with the later ones. By his 20s, he'd partnered with a man moving a digital currency called e-gold, a system the FBI would eventually shut down for laundering. And that partner? He was operating under a name that wasn't his real name. In this story, almost no one is who they say they are. And that's the detail I keep coming back to. Before Bitcoin had a name most people recognized, Cotton was already living inside the underworld of digital money. The schemes, the aliases, the FBI takedowns. He didn't stumble into crypto and lose his way. He arrived already fluent in exactly one skill: separating other people from their money and making it look like an accident. Then, in 2013, Cotton goes legitimate, or he appears to. He founds Quadriga CX, and it becomes the largest cryptocurrency exchange in Canada, the respectable one, the one the news interviews. Tens of thousands of ordinary people hand it their savings, because that is what you do with an exchange. You trust it to hold your money. And here's what makes the victims in this story different from every other crypto cautionary tale. These weren't gamblers. These were the careful ones. The school teacher who finally bought a little Bitcoin. The retiree who wanted a small, sensible position. The student saving for a down payment. They didn't chase a moonshot. They went to the biggest, most trusted name in the country and did everything right. That's the cruelty of it. The system didn't punish the reckless. It punished the people who trusted it most. Here's the thing about Cotton. He didn't even need to steal. He'd bought into Ethereum early. He would have been wealthy just sitting still. But that's not the kind of man this is. Because behind the respectable exchange, Cotton built a second, secret one. He opened an account under a fake name, Chris Marquet, and he funded that account with money that did not exist. Fictitious Canadian dollars, numbers he typed into his own system. Then he used that fake money to buy his customers real cryptocurrency and moved it off the exchange into wallets only he controlled. Sit with that. Every time a real person deposited real money, the founder was on the other side of the trade with money he'd invented, quietly draining the real assets out the back door. It wasn't an exchange, it was a magic trick. And the audience was 76,000 people who thought they were just buying Bitcoin. And the genius of it, the truly dark genius, is that on the screen, everything looked normal. Customers logged in and saw their balances. The numbers were right there, green, growing. They could have sworn the money was sitting safely in their accounts. But the balance on a screen is just a promise. And behind the promise, the actual coins had already walked out the door in the name of a man who never existed. But a magic trick like this needs the music to never stop. And in 2018, the music stopped. Cotton had been gambling the stolen money, not hiding it in a vault, betting it. He'd gone heavily long on Ethereum. And in 2018, Ethereum did not cooperate. It crashed, over 90%. The hole that opened up was catastrophic. When auditors finally went through the books, around $115 million was simply gone. More money missing than the entire exchange had ever earned. So picture his position in late 2018. He is sitting on a secret, unfillable hole. 76,000 people are owed money that no longer exists. The walls are closing in. And a man who has been lying since he was 15 has to figure out how this ends. And understand, there is no good ending available to him. He can't quietly trade his way out. The hole is bigger than the entire company ever made. He can't refill it. The money evaporated in the crash. He can't confess. It's a $115 million fraud against tens of thousands of people. Every door in that room is locked except one, and the only way through it is to stop existing. And here is where the story stops being a fraud and starts being something colder. Because 12 days before he leaves the country, Gerald Cotton sits down and signs his will. A healthy 30-year-old man, signing a will, 12 days before a trip. And in that will, among other things, he leaves $100,000 to his 2 dogs. I read that detail 3 times. A man who is about to die of a sudden illness he supposedly didn't know was fatal, just happened to put his affairs in perfect order, days before, down to the dogs. Then he flies to India, on what was supposed to be his honeymoon, and on December 9th, he dies. The official story is Crohn's disease, complications, a sudden cardiac arrest in a hotel in India. And the moment he dies, the exchange goes dark, because the cold wallets, the accounts holding what was left of the customer's crypto, were locked. And the only person with the keys was now in a coffin. $190 million, sealed inside a dead man's head. No password, no backup, no way in. The most convenient death in the history of finance. Now, if you run a real company holding other people's money, you know how reckless that sounds. No second signer, no recovery key, no succession plan. One person, one password, one point of failure. For a man this careful, a man who signed his will down to the dogs, to leave the single most important secret in his life with no backup at all, that isn't carelessness, that's design. And then the details start coming out, and every single one makes it worse. There was no autopsy, none. A man dies far from home, holding the keys to a fortune, and no one cuts him open to confirm why. The body was handled by hotel staff because an embalmer refused to receive it. Refused. And then the conspiracy theory that should sound insane starts sounding reasonable. His own investors, the people he robbed, went to a court in Ontario and formally demanded that his body be dug up, exhumed, so that a forensic team could confirm that the man in Gerald Cotton's grave was actually Gerald Cotton. Think about what it takes for victims to stand in front of a judge and ask to open a grave. That's not greed. That's the feeling, deep in your gut, that you have been played one last time. And the timeline of his death does nothing to settle that feeling. He travels to a country thousands of miles away. He dies in a private hotel, not a hospital. The local handling of the body is irregular enough that an embalmer steps back from it. There is no independent autopsy. And the death certificate, in a story about a man who built a fortune on fake documents and false names, is the one piece of paper everyone is asked to simply believe. I'm not telling you he's alive. I genuinely don't know. I'm telling you that a man this practiced at deception could not have engineered a more perfect exit if he'd written it himself. To this day, the body has not been confirmed by the kind of independent autopsy his investors demanded. To this day, thousands of them do not believe he is dead. And here's the part that genuinely keeps me up. The case for his death rests heavily on one person, his wife, who was there. If he faked it, she had to know. And yet, she walked away with almost none of the missing money, which means either the death was real, or somewhere out there is a man who pulled off the perfect disappearance and left even his wife holding nothing. Neither answer is comforting. So what do you do with a story that refuses to end? Here's what it taught me. The most dangerous lie in this entire space is the word exchange. 76,000 people didn't gamble on a meme coin. They didn't ape into some obvious scam. They did the responsible thing. They used the big, trusted, respectable platform and handed it their keys. And the man holding those keys had been a con artist since he was a child. Not your keys, not your coins. You've heard it 1,000 times. This is what it actually means. It means that the moment your money sits in someone else's account, Your fortune is only as real as the honesty of a stranger you will never meet. Gerald Cotton understood that better than anyone. He built an entire empire on the gap between what people thought they owned and what they actually controlled. And the most chilling thing about this whole story isn't whether he's alive or dead. It's that it worked. For years, in plain sight, a man with a documented history of fraud ran the country's biggest exchange, typed fake money into his own system, and drained real fortunes out the back. And nobody checked. No regulator, no auditor, no journalist looked behind the curtain until the only man who knew where the money went was conveniently beyond questioning. The lesson isn't don't trust crypto. The lesson is older and darker than crypto. It's that the most expensive thing you will ever own is your belief that the person holding your money is exactly who he says he is. Somewhere, there is a grave with a name on it, and $190 million no one has ever found, and 76,000 people who were promised an answer and never got one. Maybe he's in the ground, maybe he isn't, but the money is gone either way, and the door it's locked behind was never one he meant for anyone to open. 7 years later, the smartest people in the world have tried to crack it, and that password has never once been typed again. I'm still digging into stories like this one. If you want to come with me into the next one, subscribe. Some doors are worth opening, and some are exactly the kind someone died to keep shut.